Some movies start out badly, other movies end badly, other movies have bad parts in between, but Hocus Pocus is bad from beginning to end, and I hated this movie from the beginning when three witches are put to death in Salem, Massachusetts 300 years ago, until the end when the same three witches are put to death again in Salem, Massachusetts today. The three witches are played by Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy from Sister Act, and they're resurrected after an old curse is reactivated and go on the warpath in Salem today on Halloween.
Sisters! All Hallows Eve has become a night of frolic, where children wear costumes and run amok. Amok. Oh, really, just one child.
There's a subplot involving a young boy from the Salem of 300 years ago who was turned into a cat with apparently even more than 9 lives.
Look!
I hate it when that happens. What? I told you I can't die.
The performers in this movie could be accused of a lot of things, but underacting is not one of them.
This is the end.
No.
I feel it.
Okay.
We are doomed. I feel the icy breath of death upon my neck. Mary,
What?
take me to the window.
Yes, Winnie.
I wish to say goodbye.
Yes, Winnie.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, cruel world.
Bye-bye, cruel world.
Goodbye to life.
Bye-bye, life.
Watching this movie, it seemed to me as if a sort of hysteria had overcome the set, as if they realized that the story and the screenplay gave them nothing to do, but maybe they thought they could make up for that by running around and screaming hysterically at each other. It was a hard film to follow. It was a harder film to care about. It was a real hard film to sit through. I give Hocus Pocus 1 star, and I'm Roger Ebert. They say that sequels are rarely as good as original films, but Addams Family Values must be the exception because I like this movie better than the original film. I thought it worked better, especially in the opening scenes where onto the Addamses a child is born to proud Papa Gomez and Mama Morticia.
He has my father's eyes.
Gomez, take those out of his mouth.
A baby in the house. It's about time. Hey, kiddo.
Did you see that?
Well, of course, any Addams baby is going to be more than a handful, and so the family decides to hire a nanny, and who turns up but the sexy Joan Cusack.
Hi, I'm Debbie Jelinski from the agency.
The agency? But they claimed no one else was available. They suggested a Doberman.
Surprise. I've been out of town.
I believe we may have a new nanny. Miss Jelinski.
Deb. Isn't he a lady killer?
Acquitted.
The nanny wants to get the older kids out of the way, so she suggests summer camp for them, and believe it or not, 2 Addams Family kids don't exactly fit in very well at your typical children's summer camp.
Oh yeah, kid has to be extra special to get in here. Gifted. Exceptional. Our Amanda's already skipped 2 grades. How about your boy?
Probation.
We just love Chippewa. Amanda couldn't wait. It's all she talked about. She's got a whole new wardrobe. And this little lady?
Oh, Wednesday's at that very special age when a girl has only one thing on her mind.
Boys.
Homicide.
I like this movie a lot better than the original. I think maybe it was because there was more going on. Not only the summer camp, not only the birth of the baby, but also this plot by the nanny to marry the long-lost brother Fester. I like the movie enough to give it 3 stars, in fact, that I'm Roger Ebert. Day of the Dead is the 3rd movie in George Romero's Living Dead trilogy, a series that started back in 1967 with the famous classic Night of the Living Dead and continued in 1980 with Dawn of the Dead, a movie that I thought was really very good, very effective. Unfortunately, Day of the Dead is not nearly as good as it continues the story of a small band of human survivors who are trying to hold off the hordes of ghouls who have inhabited the earth. This movie is that maybe science can find a way to use these ghouls, maybe train them to do useful tasks, like, for example, in this scene, train them how to shoot a gun. Now, I don't think that's real bright.
It's empty, Captain. We saw the bullets come out. Let's see what he does. Let's see what Bub does in this situation.
By the end of the movie, both the human researchers and the ghouls are locked up in an underground salt mine in Florida, where it looks as if the ghouls may have the last word. One of the increasing problems with this series is that there's only a limited number of things you can do with a ghoul. For example, in Dawn of the Dead, 5 years ago, they had them in a shopping mall where one of the great scenes had the ghouls trying to walk up the down escalator. Well, that was kind of funny, but in this movie, all they do is moan a lot and shuffle around looking ugly and hideous. So that leaves it up to the humans, and they talk too much in this movie. They scream too much. They have too much to say, too little to do. The movie never really goes anywhere. So I give Day of the Dead 1.5 stars, and I'm Roger Ebert. Needful Things is another one of those Stephen King stories about a peaceable little town up in New England where everybody gets along with each other and likes each other and helps out their neighbors until one day things get terribly shaken up when a stranger comes into town who has a mysterious and dreadful secret. In this case, the stranger is played by Max von Sydow, and his secret is he's the devil.
The young carpenter from Nazareth? I knew him well. Promising young man, but he died badly. A famine here, a flood there, a little bloodlust, a broken heart. You can't win. I've got God on my side.
Von Sydow opens a little store called Needful Things, and his stock turns out to be just those items that everybody in town has desired more than anything else. Of course, his secret is the price of whatever he sells in the store is your soul, but Bonnie Bedelia doesn't know that when she admires a magical amulet. The local police chief is played by Ed Harris, and he's just about the only guy in town who has suspicions about this newcomer with the strange store on the corner.
He came here to destroy us.
Oh, you wussy.
There have been 2 murders and an attempted suicide in this quiet little town, and Mr. Leland Garner's at the bottom of it.
There is some humor in the film, as in this scene where the devil is confronted by a local preacher.
Then you will have little objection to my placing this in your front window.
No, I couldn't possibly do that. You see, I, like you, am here to serve everyone.
It's pretty clear that the town is there and the people are there and the devil is turned up and he's going to try to buy everybody's soul, and that only Ed Harris sees through him. And once we've got that figured out, the rest of the movie is just a waiting game until the end, when there are all kinds of stunts and special effects and exploding buildings and fireballs and all of that sort of thing, which basically at this point is getting pretty boring in the movies. I'd rather have a character resolution based on personality than on a lot of explosions and special effects. I give this movie 1.5 stars, and I'm Roger Ebert. This movie poster says, if Jason still haunts you, you're not alone. And this movie poster is all you're going to see of Friday the 13th Part 5, because the studio, Paramount, has not released any review scenes from this movie, maybe because they suspect that Jason does still haunt some movie critics. Me, for example. Jason, you might remember, is the berserk killer in the Friday the 13th movies, and I've seen Friday the 13th, and Friday the 13th Part 2, and Friday the 13th 3D, and Friday the 13th Part 4, which was subtitled The Final Chapter, but it wasn't, because now here's Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. And what haunts me is, it looks as if this series is going to go on and on and on. It's not Jason that bothers me, it's the sequels. Part 6, Part 7, Part 8. Sorry, Jason, this time the lights went out on you. I give Friday the 13th Part 5 no stars, and I'm Roger Ebert. Return of the Living Dead begins when a teenager gets a job in one of those supply companies that sells cadavers and skeletons and dead dogs and pickled worms and stuff like that to biology classes and scientists for their experiments. And the first day on the job, the kid's sitting there, and the owner of the company says, remember that movie, Night of the Living Dead, about all the ghouls and zombies that were walking around? Well, that movie was actually based on fact, except the government suppressed it. And to prove it, I've got some of those zombies down in the basement right now in airtight canisters.
Look at that! You said that thing was alive?
So they say.
Hey, these things don't leak, do they?
Leak? Hell no. These things were made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Well, inevitably, the ghouls escape and they turn out to have a virus that infects everybody around, including this guy, who exhibits some very disturbing symptoms.
Who's there?
A lot like all the other Living Dead movies, this one is about how the ghouls march around eating everything they can get their hands on and terrifying those few people who aren't ghouls themselves. Now, it's kind of a close call whether or not Return of the Living Dead is a ripoff or not, because this movie was not made by the same people who made Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, the Living Dead trilogy. This movie is inspired by those movies. It's made by different people, but yet at the same time, I liked it better than the recent Day of the Dead because the special effects are better, the humor is better, the acting is better. So I give it 3 stars, and I'm Roger Ebert.
Let me out! Sandy Claus, in person. What a pleasure to meet you. Why, you have hands. You don't have claws at all.
The Nightmare Before Christmas takes us to a land of holidays. Jack Skellington is the pumpkin king of Halloween. He developed a serious case of Santa envy and sets out to conquer a winter wonderland. Director Tim Burton says being raised in Southern California helped inspire the fable.
You know, the only way you experience seasons in California is like walking up and down the aisle at Thrifty's during the holidays. You know, there's the Halloween display, and you know, that's the way you get to experience fall, or you know, the Christmas display. That's how you get to experience winter.
A 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a...
The filmmaker admits to a ghoulish admiration for creatures of the night.
That's why I'm so fascinated by people with masks and things, and you know, that's why I love making people up in movies and stuff, because it changes people. It does something to them. You know, and watching the old monster movies too, it's like when an actor would dress as a monster, something would be released in them, and they would give a performance maybe because they were covered, that came more from the subconscious in a way. At least it's felt, you know, like Lon Chaney or Boris Karloff as Frank. Yeah, there was something that when you change people.
You know, of all the holidays we have in this country, Halloween is certainly the most bizarre. All the others are about bunnies and Santas and turkeys and firecrackers, but there's this one holiday, and it's the children. Probably after Christmas, it's the favorite holiday of the children, and it involves death.
It's a funny thing, but see, that's the only, in our country, it seems like America is one of the few countries that doesn't acknowledge death. I mean, I collect like these Mexican Day of the Dead things, and in mostly every other culture, death is more accepted. It's part of life. I mean, and it's much more acknowledged in a way. Here, it seems it's much more swept under the carpet, so to speak.
That's not Sandy Claus.
It isn't?
The movie utilizes stop-action animation, which simulates real motion using puppets.
They're actual puppets that have an armature, basically these little skeletons that move them. So the animators move it frame by frame to create the movement. And it's a really, you know, that's part of the reason why I love it so much. It's like really handmade. I mean, it's a really subconscious thing to me, but when I watch it, you get such an energy because it's like handmade, you know? It's like people actually moving it, you feel that energy.
I'm Roger Ebert.
Next time.